Yes, absolutely. About 45 minutes ago, we heard from Commander BJ Harrington, who spoke to various journalists, not giving us a huge number of details, it has to be said, but confirming that there had been a number of casualties, one fatality, woman, and casualties including police. Intriguingly, also confirming that one of the key witnesses to the event was, in fact, the acting commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, and he would be recusing himself from monitoring the investigation. It would be appropriate. We do believe there may be another statement here in about 20 minutes' time. Of course, we'll bring that to you when we get to
Okay, tonight, thank you. So another statement from the police. You can imagine this is a very fluid situation. Police will be updating us all the time. Jason Farrow is here with me as well. Jason, that was just a snapshot, if you will, as to where our correspondents are. It's a very contained, situation has developed. Terrorists have described it. But about 3 separate locations.
Yeah, so we're talking about the first one, which is sort of over my shoulder on the bridge. You can still see London buses. I don't know how well the camera can see behind me, but London buses stacked up on the bridge there, and then come round here in the vehicle that's obviously gone onto the pavement, and just at the front gate there of Palace of Westminster, slammed into the barriers. There's been some kind of altercation outside where police officers have been injured, and then they've managed to get into the gates where, again, eventually, after an altercation, the suspect has been shot. Now, I was talking to you about Tobias Ellwood, who was obviously involved in helping out, and he is a terrorism minister, and he's also the MP for Bournemouth. And he was, in fact, his brother was killed in the Bali attack. He was giving mouth-to-mouth, I understand, to one of the police officers who had been attacked by this, who had been stabbed. So that's the latest detail I have from inside the Westminster, House of Westminster. They're also saying that a lot of the MPs and even some of the cabinet were being kept in Westminster Hall, which is just off the main yard where the attack happened. And I also understand that quite a lot of MPs heard the attack, they heard the gunfire, and some of them hit the floor, some of them ran.
That they trained for.
Yeah, they're absolutely, and I mean MPs as well are told, you know, if you hear a gunfire go off, you run in the opposite, you try and work out where it is and run in the opposite direction. So they would have been absolutely, kind of thing could happen.
Okay, let's just look at, we've got some viewer video for you. Now, we have had a look at this, and we're comfortable to show it to you at this stage, watching Sky News at 5. This is a viewer video, as they say, and this is what happened in Parliament Square as the situation unfolded. It's raw video, we're just going to play it to you with the sound up, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Here we go. Okay, so what we saw there was an incident where there seemed to be some people running away from the scene. Obviously, they were aware of this vehicle that had plowed into the railings. They tried to move away as quickly as they could. And then a short time after that, we heard the gunshots. Probably about 3 or 4, difficult to tell at this early stage. Certainly, we believe that police had been firing at a man who had managed to get inside the confines of the Palace of Westminster, almost in front of Big Ben there. That's the gate that we were telling you about that is potentially incredibly vulnerable. So this is raw footage that we're looking at, Jason. This is shot by Sky News viewer. Police incredibly quickly on the scene. I know that police are always armed, police always here, but other police very quickly on the scene.
Yeah, and you can see there actually on that footage that the gate is open. and you can see that there are just very small fences around that gate area, which would be easy to get through. As we were saying, this is kind of slightly exposed area when it comes to a potential weakness in the building, although you have got those big wrought iron gates, so when they're closed, they're pretty hard to get through. The other thing I noticed from that footage is that a police car has pulled up along the side, and you see police officers running out, because you have police officers all around the square. I believe we're going to be able to show some pictures now.
We are actually. Now, we think this is a suspect. We've talked a lot about a man that was seen on the ground in Old Palace Yard. We've talked about a man being given CPR. We've talked about a man being given mouth to mouth. We have also heard about a man that has been taken on a gurney into St Thomas's Hospital, heavily armed. A lot of police officers around that man. That would suggest that he's potentially still alive. Mark White's got more for us. Mark, what more can you tell us?
Yeah, well, sources confirming to us that this is indeed the man that they believe to be the attacker, a man who was wielding a knife after crashing that vehicle into the perimeter fence around the Houses of Parliament. You can see that he's being worked on there by medical staff with police in close attendance, armed officers. Another thing that you can probably make out if you strain is the knife on the ground, and it looks like a large kitchen knife. Now, just to tell you what that is in relation to the screen furniture there, you can see the yellow breaking news logo that we have there. Just above that, it's now come down, but effectively you can see it just on the cobblestone there, behind that man in the white shirt, and just in front of one of the armed officers there. Between the two individuals, it's a large kitchen knife with a black handle. The knife that we understand the attacker was wielding as he left that vehicle, and the information that we have at this stage is that multiple police officers were attacked and injured, up to 3 injured from the information that we have got. Those casualty figures are always quite slow in coming out officially. What we're told, though, is that Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley, who is the UK's most senior counter-terrorism officer in charge of counter-terrorism command at Scotland Yard, will be making a statement in about 15 minutes' time outside New Scotland Yard. You can see that knife there now in close-up, just behind the man there with the white shirt and the blue trousers, and in front of the armed officers there. It's from the looks of it there, it looks like one of those large kitchen knives that you can really find in any kitchen up and down the country, and that's what makes these attacks very difficult to guard against, because they are devastating in nature, but they are actually very low tech in terms of the planning that's required. You only have to get yourself a vehicle, as clearly this attacker had that Hyundai 4x4 vehicle, and get yourself a knife, and that is all that was required to cause the absolute devastation that we saw on Westminster Bridge from fairly early on at the start of Westminster Bridge until right down towards the Houses of Parliament. That vehicle was up on the pavement, careering into pedestrians who were on that bridge, and anybody that knows that particular bridge, even at this time of year, it's very busy with tourists who flock to central London to see the Houses of Parliament and Big Ben. We can speak now to Sky's policing analyst, Graham Wetton. Now, Graham, of course, in terms of the investigation as it goes on, they'll want to establish who this individual is. They have him in custody, we know that, but the priority, of course, will be to find out whether there are any other individuals out there who may be planning similar attacks.
Well, yeah, let's keep the investigation team to start looking at the background, any accomplices or support that this individual has had. First initially to find out who he is and what his background is, where he came from today, where the car's come from, what was in the car, any identity documents at all, and also the support, any support or assistance this man has had to get where we got today.
And former Officer Peter Kirkham is alongside you there, lending his expertise to this. Peter, obviously a really horrifying event for members of the public there, but for the police officers who have to put themselves on the front line to try to tackle this attacker end up being injured themselves. And we're told actually that the acting assistant commissioner of the Metropolitan Police was there on scene in Parliament at the time and, you know, helped out in the immediate aftermath of this incident.
Okay, I mean, our thoughts are with the families, friends and colleagues of the officers that have been injured, and we're praying for the best. They're the officers that run to the danger, and very graphically here, because there's so much footage in real time, that we see quite dramatically officers running towards the danger and everybody else running away. That is what police officers do out of sight cameras all day and every day, all across the country, and we mustn't forget that.
And we saw on our user video from one of the Sky viewers and his mobile phone, you saw an armed response vehicle just pulling up at the front gates there to the main courtyard inside Parliament, and that was really within seconds of the incident that was unfolding. The fact is, as we know, Peter, the armed response capability in the capital has been increased significantly. That will have been very important in preventing more injuries here.
Very much so, and this situation has happened probably at the, if you see what I mean, from the point of view of a police firearms response. You couldn't get anywhere in the country that's got more firearms officers within easy reach. I suspect the firearms officers were already en route as a result of calls about what was happening on the bridge already. And then they arrived, as we saw in that footage, probably about a minute or two after that has happened. Now, that's, you know, very telling that happening somewhere else, would that be possible? And if not, what would the outcome have been? But there needs to be a very careful debrief of this. There's so much footage, there's so much information around that this will be a huge learning opportunity. And I hope the politicians watch this and think, what if? Because there are not sufficient firearms officers elsewhere in the country for this sort of response.
So very sad news to impart. Information now coming to me from a Sky source that one of the police officers involved in this incident has succumbed to his injuries, has died. We understand that up to 3 officers were attacked outside Parliament as this man struggled to get into Westminster. Those 3 officers suffered varying degrees of injuries, but the information that we're getting now as we reintroduce Kay Burley here is that one of those police officers has died as a result of the stab injuries he received.
That, for people just tuning our way, I know that you were talking about this earlier and telling us that 3 officers had been injured. Originally, the reports were that 1 officer had been injured, and from what you're telling us, as Sky sources saying one of those officers has died.
Initially, we had thought, Kay, that 1 officer had been stabbed. Obviously, in the early instance or the early stages of any unfolding incident like this, details can be confused, and eyewitnesses have differing accounts. And the official information that we had, certainly from a source, was that 1 officer had been injured, had been stabbed in a confrontation with the attacker. It subsequently has come our way from a source that multiple officers were injured, possibly up to 3. We believe with may have been stab injuries as well. 1 of those officers has succumbed to their injuries. We are expecting a statement, Kay, from Mark Rowley, the Assistant Commissioner at the Metropolitan Police, the most senior counter-terrorism officer in the UK. He may confirm that, but at this stage, they might just not have that kind of information that they want to put out. Their first priority, always and understandably, is dealing with the unfolding incident. Although this particular incident, in terms of attackers, we believe is at the very least contained and may well be over in terms of there not being any other attackers. What we don't know is if there may be other attacks that are in the planning that may unfold in the coming hours. We have seen with other terrorist incidents around the globe that other terrorist attacks have taken place at multiple locations. So not just 1, but multiple locations have been attacked, usually within a short period of each other and in quite a close geographical area. So that will be front and center of the thinking of investigators as they urgently try to establish who this individual is. The fact is, clearly they've got him in custody now, which is very important. At the moment, we believe he is still alive. He was brought a short time ago to St Thomas's Hospital. That's a major trauma unit just on the other side of the River Thames. And he was guarded by a number of armed officers. We showed the still image of this man lying on the stretcher, having been lifted onto that stretcher. He was on the cobblestones earlier, surrounded by armed officers pointing at him as they tried to make the area safe. He was being worked on by paramedics. He is now at St Thomas's Hospital. We haven't heard otherwise, so the assumption is this man is still alive. And Kay, you can see on the water there, on the right-hand side of the screen, this is one of the rigid inflatables that the CTF SFOs, counter-terrorism specialist firearms officers, use to get to locations very quickly on the River Thames. And we know, of course, that this unfolded right by the Thames, and we know that at least one of the injured here fell into the river or was tossed into the river by the impact of being struck by that vehicle, and that person has been recovered from the water. Some reports that that person is still alive. So an unfolding incident contained for the moment, but a very wide-ranging investigation to determine whether this man acted alone or with others.
Okay, just hearing that there will be another police briefing in just a few minutes' time is what we're being told. Mark, I'm sure you're aware of that. We're also hearing that Theresa May has spoken to Donald Trump on telephone. She'll be chairing a COBRA meeting very shortly, and we'll get input from that as and when that meeting is finished. We're hearing also that New York police have been told to tighten security around UK locations. As far as the number that have perished, Mark, you have previously told us that at least 2 people have died. Do we know whether those numbers have included the police officer, or is that number increasing all the time? Difficult to say at this stage.
Yeah, I think we need to be a little bit cautious there, Kate. You might be right. The 2 people who were reported to us as being fatally wounded in this attack may well include the police officer. We've only just found out that a police officer has succumbed to his injuries, so it may be in that tally, but certainly about 45 minutes or so ago, a source confirmed to me that the number of dead had risen from 1, that woman who was struck by a vehicle on Westminster Bridge, to 2. And we didn't know whether that fatality at the time was one of the civilians around there, or whether it may have been a police officer. Clearly a devastating attack in terms of the many tourists who come, flock into central London and crowd onto Westminster Bridge and the streets all around Parliament, but a devastating attack too for the police, who really have to put themselves front and centre of any of these incidents. They are trained now to push forward because they know that the motivation in these terrorist attacks is no longer to go and to try and take hostages, to hold them for any length of time, to make some kind of statement that might come to a peaceful conclusion. These days, it's all about trying to really make as many or inflict as many deaths and injuries on people as they can, to try and make that kind of a statement. So police push forward to try and confront any attacker. And the information that we have in terms of some of those officers, indeed it may be all of those officers who were injured, is that they would have been unarmed officers. You know, of course, that guarding the gates of Westminster is a mixture of armed and unarmed officers. And sometimes you will find at the gates that 2 or 3 of those officers are unarmed, and their armed colleagues are maybe 20, 30, 40 yards further down at one of the other entrances. They were on scene, the armed officers, very quickly indeed, of course, to subdue this attacker. But it was the information we have that it was unarmed officers who pushed forward, despite being unarmed, put themselves in harm's way to try and stop this attacker getting into Parliament.
Okay, and Mark, as we hear from Sean Spicer, who is the press secretary, of course, many people know that for Donald Trump, saying we condemn today's attack. We applaud the quick response from the British police. The City of London has the full support of the US government. We have looked at images of this man lying on the ground. I wonder if you could describe his voice again to us, Mark, if you would please, as we wait for the police to update us with further information. We can see a knife that has been kicked away from this man on the ground as he is being urgently attended to by others.
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 similar images that are out there at the moment. We have one of those images where you can see that the man is now on a stretcher. He's about to be loaded into the back of that ambulance, being worked on by police and by paramedics there. And just behind one of the men there, the man you can see in the white shirt with the blue gloves and the blue trousers, just behind him is what looks to be one of these large kitchen knives. And in another of the images that I saw, Kay, one of the armed officers was standing on that knife just to make sure that the attacker could not get to the knife. He was standing on the knife. He was pointing his weapon down at the alleged attacker as people were tending to him medically on the ground. A very dramatic incident was unfolded there. And of course, just nearby, just feet away, but you can't see it in that shot, was another police officer who was being worked on by other passers-by. We understand that the MP, Tobias Ellwood, who lost his brother in the Bali attack all those years back, was there and was giving first aid to that badly injured police officer.
No, Mark, but let me interrupt you, if I may, just for a second, because we are looking at some images here from our position about 100 metres or so from the Palace of Westminster. This is the House of Lords that we can see, and we can see a group of school children, quite young school children, that are being escorted from the building. I just need to move a little bit further away, and then you can see a little bit clearer. School children are invited, Jason Powell, school children are shown around on a regular basis, aren't they? But they would have been caught up in this, and they would have been involved in the lockdown.
Yeah, quite terrifying for them, really, these school children. It's quite common for them to be shown around Westminster, especially on the day of Prime Minister's Questions. We often see them in the building on that day, and they look like primary children, so they were young, I would say, under the age of 10, although perhaps an older bunch coming out now. And yeah, they would have been a part of that tour, and that tour does involve the yard where this attack happened. It involves Westminster Hall, close to the yard. So, it's quite possible that some of them might have witnessed some of the horrors that were going on within Parliament when that happened. And it looks like they've been kept in there now for quite a number of hours, and are just being released now here onto the green on the west side of the building, and coming out onto Milton Road.
I mean, these are dozens of little ones. Obviously, we don't want them heading up this way. We'll be careful not to identify these youngsters, so we'll probably just show their legs or some such, but they're starting to stream out of the building now, and they're being escorted by the police. One can only start to imagine how these youngsters must have felt when this incident unfolded. They would have been aware. Do you want to have a look? But again, please don't identify these children as we're looking at these images. They would have been anxious. They would have been unsure. I'm just going to bob down, and then I'm not in the way of our colleagues who are also showing the pictures at the same time. So they're just pausing for a second now, these youngsters. We'll be careful not to identify them, obviously. Can we pan down just to show their legs rather than to show their faces? They're going to come behind us here. There are medics here who are just going to have a chat with these children and make sure that they're okay, feeling okay, slightly anxious about what has happened to them, not sure what these youngsters have witnessed today, but it is a terrorist incident right in the centre of London, and these youngsters were caught up in that. There were shots fired as well, of course, Jason, during that, and I'm looking at these kids. They are
between sort of ages of 7 and 11, perhaps we're talking about. Quite common for them to be shown around the House of Lords, the House of Commons. These guided tours happen all the time it's a great experience for them, but today it would have been quite different. It would have been frightening. They would have been kept inside the building, like the MPs, moved from one place to another, kept within a cordon that was created around the people in the building by the police as they tried to go through the building to make sure that it was secure. I would say we've just seen about over 100.
Yeah. I'm just looking at their little faces actually. Some of them are holding hands, but they've been buddied up, so they're 2 by 2. They're holding hands with their buddies. Some of them look pretty shocked, pretty confused about what's happened. 1 or 2 of them a little bit tearful. I'm going to say they're probably aged between about 8 and 12, something like that. And now we're seeing another, again, we'll keep it wide so we can't identify these kids, who are, again, looking a little bit stunned by what's happened. Hardly surprising.
Yeah, they've had a long afternoon, haven't they? They've been in there wondering what's going on. And no doubt the police, who are very well trained in doing this, will have looked after them well. There's a fair number of teachers with them as well. And this has been a probably rather longer than expected visit to Parliament. Shall I just give you the statement from the Mayor of London whilst we're here? Because it's just dropped on Twitter. He says there's been a serious incident at the edge of Parliament this afternoon, being treated as a terrorist attack. I've spoken to the acting commissioner. The Met Police Service is dealing with the incident and have an urgent investigation underway. My thoughts are with those affected and their families. I would like to express my thanks to the police and the emergency services who work so hard to keep us safe and show tremendous bravery in exceptionally difficult circumstances. Of course, we now know that one of those police officers appears to have been killed in this attack.
I'm not sure whether it's the Speaker or the Deputy Speaker, but they have informed MPs that would have been trapped inside the chamber that sadly an officer has died as a result of his injuries. The Sky source is saying at least one other person has also died as a result of this terrorist incident here in central London this afternoon. As I think we can get up again now, just as those youngsters have just made their way through. We did our very best to make sure that we didn't identify those youngsters, but they are just to the right of where we're standing now. They're waiting, I'm guessing, for their parents to come along and collectively all have their high-vis jackets on. Some of them are lots more shocked than others. They will rise to the heart of this developing story this afternoon. As you were saying, hundreds of them come, particularly on a Wednesday when it's
a small group of them just coming out now, and it's quite, to say, it's quite common. You're always walking around on Prime Minister Day, the Prime Minister's questions. They also often go in on a Friday as well when it's a bit clearer to have a look around. And as you say, some quite stunned faces there. Some of them seem to be getting over it, laughing and joking with their friends, but some of them still looking quite stunned by whatever it is that they experienced this afternoon on what is normally a very exciting tour. And I have friends and family who've done it and have really, really enjoyed it. But I mean, this would have been quite different for these children today. Just looking at them there, they do look a little bit stunned by what's happened.
Yeah, they do look, some of them, as you say, quite stunned and shocked by what's happened. Hardly surprising, really. We are waiting for another police briefing. We've had one already from Scotland Yard. They didn't confirm injuries. They said several people had been injured. They certainly didn't confirm fatalities to us, but we are expecting another police briefing within the next few moments. In the meantime, we can look again perhaps at that image of the believed to be the attacker who had managed to get inside Old Palace Yard. People who are just away, people are doing that all the time. It's near Big Ben. It's down towards the bottom end where Westminster Bridge is, but it is within the confines of the Palace of Westminster. How on earth did they get inside there?
They would have come round that corner, and as you turn the corner off the bridge, the gate is right there. It's always got police officers on it. Mark was saying that these police officers who were attacked outside the gate were unarmed, and again, that's quite common. You know, keep the peace, keep people away from the gates. Just manage the in and out. There will be armed officers around, and there's always armed officers inside. And it seems as if there was a very quick response once the intruder got into the ground. One of the things I noticed about the photograph is that he has a pad on his chest, on the lower and upper part of his chest.
CPR.
And that's CPR. So it looks as if they've had to try to resuscitate him in some way after he has been shot. There's no need to put a CPR on someone unless they stop breathing, their heart stopped working. So that's the kind of thing that must have happened. by the looks of him, because they his chest and put those two packs
terrorism
on.
minister was involved with that, you were telling
Well, the terrorism minister, Tobias Ellwood, was involved in trying to keep a police officer alive. That's what we understand. He actually gave CPR to one of the police officers. We don't know if it's the one who eventually was killed, but it looks as if Tobias Ellwood was involved in that, and we actually see an image of him with blood on his face, getting involved in what was going on in that incident.
Okay, St John's St Francis School is what we're told were one of the schools that was coming out there. They have tweeted, they're in Somerset, and they have tweeted within the last few moments to say that we're safe, we are well, and we are lightening the mood with a sing-song is what they have been saying on Twitter. And that's what you need to do, isn't it? You need to, and these youngsters would have been in there, they would have been very unsure about what was happening, they would have potentially heard these shots fired as well. And the teachers have done everything they can to control the situation.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been horrifying for a parent, knowing that their children were visiting this today, to know that their children were there and not know what was going on. And it probably was the case that the teachers were calling back to school, telling them they're safe. But it's a reminder, isn't it, of how cynical this attack is. A guy drives down, it's always full of tourists, people from all over the world on that bridge. You're not targeting anyone in particular. Often it's a woman who's been killed, children would have been on that bridge. And as I say, the attack Westminster, it's not just the police, but there are ministers, but also young.
Scotland Yard, here we go.
Okay, let's go.
Good evening, my name is Mark Crowley. I'm the National Head of Counter-Terrorism Policing, and I'm also Acting Deputy Commissioner. I want to make a statement about this afternoon's events, and I'm going to try and cover three main areas. The ongoing operation, and what London can expect over the coming days. As you know, we've declared this as a terrorist incident, and the Counter-Terrorism Command are carrying out a full-scale investigation into the events today. The attack started over Westminster Bridge, hitting and injuring a number of members of the public, also including 3 police officers on their way back from a commendation ceremony. It crashed near to Parliament, and at least one man, armed with the knife, continued the attack and tried to enter Parliament. Sadly, I can confirm that now 4 people have died. That includes the police officer who was protecting Parliament, and one man we believe to be the attacker who was shot by a police firearms officer. The officer's family have been made aware. At least 20 people have been injured. As part of long established and well-rehearsed plans, Parliament has been locked down with our plans for a marauding terrorist attack. That response included uniformed and specialist firearms officers. We now, of course, have an ongoing operation, and whilst we currently believe there was only one attacker, I'm sure the public will understand us taking every precaution in locking down and searching the area as thoroughly and exhaustively as possible. And I know that the officials working within Parliament and public in the area completely understand the need to do this, and I thank them for their patience and their support. This investigation has the full weight and expertise of the Counter-Terrorism Command behind it. And if there are people who saw the events unfold today that haven't yet spoken to us, I would urge them to get in touch. A crime scene will remain in place in the affected areas in Westminster, and it is understanding it's vital we carry out a painstaking investigation to recover all the possible evidence. Looking forward, throughout the rest of the day, including when people are commuting home, and indeed over the days that follow, the people of London will see extra police officers armed and unarmed on our streets. This includes our officers working longer hours and extra shifts alongside our colleagues from British Transport Police and the City of London. And of course, as you're aware, we can call on the support of the military should we need to at a future point. We are also in the process of opening a back casualty bureau to help those people who are worried about friends and family who may have been caught up in the attack. Furthermore, we're reaching out to communities and community leaders across London to reassure them. Our strength as a city depends on our ability to stand together at such terrible times. If anyone sees anything suspicious or anything that causes concern, please do contact us, don't hesitate. Thoughts are with all those who have been affected by today's attack, And as a service, we've lost one of our own as he acted to protect the public and his colleagues. This is the day we planned for, but we hope would never happen. Sadly, it's now a reality. We will continue to do all we can to protect the people of London. I'll take a couple of questions. We'll look at that issue later on. There's a massive operation ongoing. I'm not going to discuss the operational sensitivities of that for reasons I'm sure you'll understand.
The officer that was attacked, was he one of the armed officers that attacked Parliament?
One of the armed officers protecting Parliament, yes. So, as you'll understand the situation, when you had such an awful incident take place on Westminster Bridge, the reports will be confused with many different and varying accounts, and we're still working our way through that. Satisfied at this stage that it looks like there was only one attacker, but it'd be foolish to be overconfident so early on. So, as I've said, for a precautionary basis, we're locking down the area, doing all necessary searches so we can be completely confident everyone is safe.
Beyond the police...
Sorry. So, what we're saying to the public is, please be vigilant. No reason to be alarmed, but vigilant on your way home. Call us if you've got any concerns, and you will see more police officers armed and unarmed out on the streets of London.
The police officer and the suspected assailant who have died, the other few people who died, did they die on Westminster Bridge or did they die in the Parliament?
That's my understanding at the moment. As you understand with these incidents, casualty numbers and details can be a bit confused, but I believe they died on the bridge. One more question, gentleman behind.
Was the attack another?
Investigation is now going forward, and I'm not going to give you any details on that for obvious reasons. We've got an awful situation. Officers have been killed. People sat down with his family. It'd be wrong for them to give details now. Thank you all very much.
Okay, so this is a police convoy, fire convoy just coming through as we listen to the most senior police officer here in London updating us on the latest information as we have it, saying that only one attacker they believe, but are keeping an open mind at this stage, saying that 20 people have been injured in this terror attack and confirming that 4 people have sadly lost their lives. Those include a police officer who has not yet been named, and also the attacker as well, is what we're being told. According to Sky sources, a woman was also one of those injured. Jason Bell is here with us as we continue to see convoys coming through. Jason, we saw an awful lot of ambulances going that way as well. Yeah. People shocked, people anxious, people unsure, and the authorities are doing their best to try to reassure inside the building, but the rest of the public as they go about their commutes this evening.
Yeah, I mean, what's extraordinary is how many ambulances we've seen still coming and going. Yes. I mean, people obviously being taken in and out of the area who are perhaps in shock or perhaps more serious injuries. But now quite a lot of the police vehicles starting to leave this area. Yeah, we've had police helicopters above us. Obviously, there's police vehicles all the way down here. They've cordoned off this entire area, and you can see around the blue flashing lights creating a cordon all around this area, which must be, I have no idea what the radius is in mileage, but a fairly substantial area of London has been shut down in order just to make sure that there is no chance that any other drama could happen here in London tonight. They're doing everything they can to reassure the public as well, to make sure that this incident is over. They're hoping that this is the end of it, and it does seem as well that the attacker was killed. We were talking earlier about the fact he had CPR in his chest. It's clear they tried to keep him alive, and not only is it their duty to try and do that, but also, obviously,
they wanted to know who he was.
Who is he? Is he working alone? Is he a lone attacker? It does look like an unsophisticated lone attack, but nonetheless, it's been devastating for certain families here today.
Got this image that we just want to show people as we're speaking, not to belie the tragedy that we have seen unfolding here today and the terrorism that has struck at the very heart, or centre of politics here in the mother of all parliaments. This is showing the Palace of Westminster This is also showing Portcullis House, and this is where some many thousands of politicians, of course, operate from here. There's 650 in the chamber of the House of Commons and also the House of Lords.
Yeah, and all their staff. There are thousands of people working inside that building. It is like a little village town in there. You know, there's offices, restaurants, bars, cash points. Everything's happening in there. People spend their working lives inside that building. One part of it is this sort of old Gothic sort of public schools type building, and the other is a far more modern glass-based building with a huge atrium where the MPs all muster to have lunch. And it seems as if a lot of the MPs were in the main parliament because there's a lot of parliamentary business going on. They were voting in the House, including the Prime Minister, who was in there at the time, and was whisked away back to number 10. But a lot of the other people, including some of the cabinet, it seems were cordoned inside the Great Hall of Westminster, which is the oldest part of the building. It used to be Henry VIII's palace a long time ago. That part of the building, which also used to be a big courthouse where Thomas More was tried, for example, and is often seen as somewhere where people are laid in state. Big wide hall, the Queen Mother was laid in state there. That's where the MPs and some of the cabinet were kept for quite a long period. And we understand across the road to Westminster Abbey, where a lot of them have been briefed and debriefed from what's happened, and MPs have been saying that they've been there inside Westminster Abbey for quite a period.
Okay, let's bring in Lewis Goodall, should we, who is standing by at Scotland Yard for us after that news conference we've heard from the police, and the very sad news that at least 4 people have died as a result of their injuries, including a police officer. Lewis.
Yes, that's right, Kay. It's Deputy Superintendent Rowley confirming that up to 20 people have been injured. 4, including the attacker, have lost their lives. And I'm actually joined now by the MP for Wakefield, Labour MP Mary Cray, who was very nearby during the incident. Mary, just take us through. What was the first sign you had that something was amiss?
Parliament was on a division. The division bell had rung. A huge crowd of people leave Portcullis House to go under the bridge, under Big Ben, to go and vote in the Palace of Westminster. There were 2 armed police officers at the bottom of the stairs, and I could hear a bit of shouting. So it's a bit unusual. Parliament's a pretty quiet, sedate place most of the time. As I began to walk through the tunnel, I was met with a crowd of people running back towards me, saying, "Get out, get out, that shots have been fired, shots have been fired, someone's on the estate." I ran straight out, couldn't get back up to my office because the escalators were both on the down, not the escalators. So we came out of the circular doors that take you into Westminster Tube Station. At that point, we were outside the building. My first thought was that we need to get the tube evacuated. So we went to the control room at Westminster Tube Station, and I told the person in charge there that there was an attack happening in Westminster. They needed to shut the station, get all the civilians out, and he was radioing his colleagues. They were putting on their high visibility jackets. I got out of the tube station. My thoughts were then with my staff, who were in the building, completely unawares.
Your staff are still in the building?
My staff are still here now. It's 3 hours later. They were very shocked. There was a sort of stunned silence on the end of the phone. I said, "Lock the doors, turn on the telly. There's a shooter in the building." We didn't know at that stage who fired the shots. We then were sort of slightly bemused. We had no idea of the terrible incident that had taken place on Westminster Bridge, and our thoughts are obviously with all of those people affected tonight, and in particular with the police officers who I see every day and who I saw at 11 o'clock this morning as I rode my bike into the House of Commons.
You must have been terrified.
It was a very panicky moment. People stood together. We were pretty calm, but I think a lot of us were pretty shaken after what was a very, very distressing event.
And have you spoken to any of your colleagues who are still in the parliamentary estate?
My staff have now been evacuated out of Portcullis House. They are literally in the next door building to New Scotland Yard. They are their identities are being checked, and I think the police will let them go once everybody has proved who they were. Because I think the one thing the police don't want is to have anybody left in that building that do any more damage.
And just quickly, your reaction to the very sad news that the police officer who was attacked has lost his life, or her life?
Well, it's a terrible, terrible day for Parliament. The 1 weak spot on our estate is those carriage gates. We have 2 police officers there, 4 police officers, two on the gate going in, 2 on the gate going out. We see them every day. We're friends with lots of them. So I know that MPs, everyone, there's thousands of people who work in that building. Our thoughts and prayers are with that poor officer and their family tonight.
Security might have to be enhanced in the wake of this.
I think we will need to look at security at the palace in the wake of this incident, but that is a plan for another day. I think tonight we need to be remembering all of those who've been caught up in today's tragic events.
Mary, thank you very much. Mary Cray there, the Labour MP for Wakefield, was very nearby during this tragic incident. We'll of course bring you any more updates from Scotland Yard as soon as we get them.
Okay, Lewis and I thank you. Hearing there from Mary Cray saying for another time, but security will once again have to be looked at the Palace of Westminster. We've been saying all afternoon that is the one weak spot on the outskirts of the Palace of Westminster. That door is open all the time to let people through, like Mary Cray on her bicycle, or ministers in their vehicles, in their government vehicles, or whatever. And it's opened all the time, not always manned by armed. So hearing from the most senior member of the Metropolitan Police that they lost one of their own today, one of 4 people that have died, including the attacker and a woman, no identities at this stage. David Bowden has been monitoring events for us since this terror attack started to unfold around lunchtime today. Here's his report.
In the middle of the afternoon, with Parliament packed, a terror attack on the Palace of Westminster, which left a policeman knifed, shot in the grounds. As terrified passers-by fled. Listen closely for the gunshots. Around the corner on Westminster Bridge, carnage as people lay injured on the pavement after a car ploughed into them before smashing into the railings of Parliament itself.
I was just walking across the bridge when suddenly a bus stopped right in front of me and everybody started screaming. And I saw a trainer in the road, and first of all,
A trainer as in a shoe?
A shoe, yeah. And I thought somebody must have been hit by a car. And then I saw a body on the other side of the road. And then there was another body further up. And then when I looked over the side of the bridge, there was another body lying in the water.
Just so happened the London tour bus.
Yeah.
Coming over the bridge. And we heard what we thought was gunshot wounds. We're not 100% sure, are you? And then we just saw the car. It just went up and just ploughed into people, and there was one person under the wheel. And then as you looked further along the bridge, there was people just lying down on the floor, and they were shot. I'd say I probably saw about maybe 10 bodies on there. But then it all happened so quickly, and the emergency services came and we came up on top of it, and just got as far away as possible.
Within minutes, parliamentary proceedings were halted and the chamber locked down.
I have no gun to suspend the sitting of the House. This House is not suspended, but please wait here.
The Prime Minister was rushed to safety by her protection detail.
I've never seen the Prime Minister moved away by the biggest plainclothes security policeman I've ever seen. Put his arm around her and very quickly away. And we could see that she was taken to her car. Automatic weapons were produced by the security detail, and she was very, very rapidly moved to safety.
Police cleared the entire area around Westminster as a fleet of ambulances moved onto the bridge and began treating the victims mown down by the car as it sped towards Parliament. Many stood no chance of getting out of the way. Those that saw it will never forget it. Crowded round their individual patients along most of the length of the bridge. Specialist counter-terrorism firearms police moved in to secure the area and sweep it for any other potential threats. Even the London Eye, which overlooks the Thames at Westminster, was temporarily shut down, those on board having to wait to be given the all clear. Tonight, the area is still locked down as terror came back to the streets of London. David Bowden, Sky News.
We heard from the signature early within the last few moments. He was telling us that sadly at least 4 people had died as a result of this terrorist incident here in central London. At lunchtime today, several other people have been catastrophically injured, is what we're hearing. 20 people have been injured. And the City Commissioner saying to us, as a service, we have lost one of our own. This was a day we planned for, but we hoped would never happen. Sadly, a reality. Let's speak to former police officer Graham Wetton, who is joining us now. Graham, I'm sure you would echo those words from Mr. Rowley. It's a day that you do prepare for, but you hope will never happen.
Yes, it is. I mean, first of all, my thoughts are with all the victims from today's tragic incident on Westminster Bridge and also at the House of Parliament, specifically the police officers, friends and families. The police officer lost his life today, standing in the way of terrorism and protecting people. It is a day that the police service plan for. It's a day we hope never happen. You hear from every briefing from the police that they're planning for these. The attack is always possible. You always hope it's never going to take place. We hear they've fought something like 13 attacks in the last few years, and yet today we've seen just one individual in a car come across Westminster Bridge into the heart of London and literally threw people outside Palace Westminster and then attack a police officer and face injury.
But it is these sort of, we don't know if he's a lone wolf or not. We know he's dead, so it's much more difficult to find out whether he was representing an organisation or not. None has claimed responsibility at this stage. But some nutter in a car plowing into dozens of people on a bridge. How do you police for that?
We talked about this before. You can't. I don't think there's a way you can stop this. Just there's one individual. And as you said, we don't know whether there's any support or backing or being influenced to do this by any other group at all. But just one person in a vehicle, and you just have to stand in central London. I was only walking past Westminster on Monday. It is a really busy place. People that never come into central London. There are people always outside Palace Westminster taking pictures. There are cars constantly going past the front gates. I'm not sure how you can actually prevent it apart from increased security measures, vehicle blockers, barriers, security checks. It's extremely difficult to prevent this sort of attack.
And what about what's going on now, Graham? There's still a lot of police activity. We've seen vehicles coming in and out all the time, not just from the police, but from the other emergency services as well. We heard from an earlier police press conference that the army is on standby if needed as well. What will be happening now?
Investigation will be in full swing. They'll be looking at the background of the individual that carried out this attack. They'll be looking at any other support that may be in place, any phone contacts, computer work, all those sort of things are part of the investigation. Just basically doing background checks to try and establish what initiated this attack, whether it was planned over a number of days. Maybe if he actually went up there and had a look at the area first. They'll be going back through hours of CCTV footage from around the area to see if they can actually pick up the car on previous days, or the individual himself, where they walked past the Palace Westminster. So it's a huge complex investigation that's literally just started to take some time. The forensic side of things at the scene will take some considerable time. You've got numerous crime scenes there, right away across Westminster Bridge and up and into the Old Palace Yard, Palace Westminster, House of Parliament. They've got significant crime scenes that they will understandably take a long time, meticulously and methodically work their way through, making sure they gather every single piece and to try and establish what exactly happened.
And the lockdown was quick, it was intense. There were many hundreds, if not thousands, of people inside that building, including hundreds of school children, as we saw coming across the road behind us just a short time ago. That would all be organised by the police as well? Okay, thank you.
Yes, evacuation of the premises would come under then that they would put the lockdown in place, because until they establish exactly how many attackers, assailants there are, the first priority is one, preserve life, and then make sure everybody is safe. The public is safe, the MPs are safe, any visitors to the Palace Westminster are safe as well. So they would put a lockdown in place, keep them in a secure and safe location. We've seen lots of armed vehicles turning up, lots of armed police officers in the area, checking the area, making sure it's safe before they feel comfortable to bring these people out and put them in coaches and get them away from the area. Then they can start going through the whole scene, the whole area, very, very slowly to investigate it.
Graham, talk us through this series of stills that we have, this series of photographs. This is the attacker on the ground. He has been disarmed. There is a knife on the ground. Police officer puts his foot on top of it, and then they try to resuscitate him. They use CPR and they try to keep him alive. That would be something that they train for, but that would be important for all sorts of reasons.
Yes, anyone who undergoes firearms training, there's a firearms course, whether it's a basic firearms officer, which I understand the diplomatic protection group, which are the ones that are normally at Palace Westminster. That's probably an officer in the white sleeves, the white shirt that you can see on the right hand side of the picture. Every firearms trained officer will go through advanced emergency life support. So if they have to ever discharge their weapon, they are then capable. The next thing is, as I said, primary objects for any police officers, well, the first priority is to preserve life, even for suspects. So once they've discharged their weapon, the next priority is then to try and preserve life, which sounds quite strange maybe to some people listening, but that is their first priority, is to then go into a life-saving operation. The officers you can see on the left in the blue shirts, those will be from the armed response vehicles who are deployed to this incident, and then making sure the suspect stays secure and contained, albeit they undergo treatment and are on a helmet. I think you can see on the picture the two items that look like they're circled in red are potentially 2 knives or 2 weapons.
And what about the shocked and injured? Who looks after them in circumstances like this?
Most police services and forces now got a very well established post-incident trauma system where counsellors and support workers will come in, they will sit them down, they will debrief them slowly. So a highly traumatic incident for officers involved in this sort of incident where people lose their lives, they're seriously injured. It has a long-standing effect on anyone that's ever been involved with this. Police officers watching this tonight will literally be having flashbacks to other incidents, similar incidents that they've experienced. A well-established program, a very supportive program for the people involved in this, and also the members of the public. Remember, the members of the public who've seen this in front of them while just walking through central London, they will also need support and trauma counselling, because it's very traumatic to see this literally happen in front of you and people to lose their lives. Police officers are trained to a certain extent as professionals to work through this. Members of the public haven't had this training. So in some respects, they need additional and increased support. And that's something that will happen over the next few days. There'll be specially trained police officers to support these people from the members of the public and also our own police officers.
They were asked to move away from windows. Right, we can see in this next image, he is a Foreign Office Minister and he's a Bournemouth as well. We can see him spattered with blood in this image, and he has been tending a wounded police officer. Not all of the officers who work here at the House of Commons are armed, of course, are they?
No, the vast majority of the diplomatic protection group who are at Palace Westminster will be armed, and those on the perimeter gates are routinely armed because it is a secure location and it is secured by armed officers. As you said, a member of Parliament has actually come out to assist. Most of the members of Parliament, I've been into the Palace on a number of occasions, they know all the officers, they know them on first name terms, they are friendly with them, they say good morning to them. So this is, for him, it will be extremely traumatic. This is somebody he probably nods and waves at every morning as he comes into work, lying fatally wounded on the floor and requiring emergency life-saving treatment, which sadly wasn't successful.
Yeah, and we believe that the Prime Minister was actually, I'm not sure how aware you are of police protection, Graham, but we believe that the Prime Minister had been here for Prime Minister's questions and was inside the House of Commons when this attack unfolded. Things happen very rapidly in those circumstances, don't they?
Yes, they do. I've worked PMQ's Prime Minister's question stuff on a number of occasions. There is a very well-rehearsed, well-established security program that goes into place every Wednesday for PMQs. The Prime Minister is escorted into the building, and they have escape routes, evasion routes, etc. in place. Her protection officers normally accompany her in Parliament while she's in there, so they are very, very well established and understand what they need to do. And as I understand it, and you can see the images on the screen now, she would have come out of Parliament very, very quickly once it was safe to evacuate her and come out from a different route than one that she normally exits Parliament by. And you would have seen her going off towards the Vauxhall end of Parliament, if that makes sense, as opposed to back towards Downing Street. They would take her out on a different route, but one that's very well rehearsed and very well practiced. They had these plans in place. They hope they never ever have to use them. Today, they had to evacuate her very quickly with her armed team.
Okay, Graham Furnine, thank you. So as night begins to fall here in central London, there has been a terrorist attack at the mother of all parliaments. 4 people are known to have died, including a woman, the attacker, and a police officer. We'll have continuing coverage here on Sky. You're watching Sky News as Westminster comes under attack.
Bystanders fled as an assailant who stabbed and killed a policeman was shot by armed officers.
Sky sources say this is the man who carried out the attack.
He began by ramming a car into pedestrians on Westminster Bridge.
He then crashed into more people outside Parliament before entering the Palace of Westminster and attacking police.
As things currently stand, 4 people are dead. Police say that includes the attacker himself.
The Prime Minister was whisked away in her car.
An emergency meeting of her Cobra Cabinet Committee tonight.
Well, good evening, good afternoon. You are watching Sky News. A remarkable day in Westminster. You can see the emergency services still on Westminster Bridge. Some 20 people injured in that location earlier today. 4 people we know have died, including 1 police officer at the Houses of Parliament, the attacker, and at least 2 people on the bridge.
Political reaction coming in all the while. The Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, who doubtless will be involved in the COVID committee meeting, says that our top priority is security. Also confirmation that Parliament, which was so dramatically suspended around about 3 o'clock today by the Deputy Speaker, will sit again. Both the House of Commons and the House of Lords will sit tomorrow, and they will sit at their normal times.
Parliament was suspended, of course, today as this happened. The Scottish Parliament was also suspended. We know that conversation has happened between President Trump and Theresa May, and that thoughts have been sent from political leaders across the world.
Well, the Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, is actually on a visit to Pakistan, but she's had these words to say.
We do not yet know the full impact of this terrible incident, but I know that the whole country will be thinking and praying for those who are affected, as I am. I want to thank the emergency services for the quick response and pay tribute to their bravery, their courage, and their professionalism. I've been briefed by the Met Police and by the security services, and the Security Minister has also been updated. This is an ongoing incident, and the government will continue to be updated. The Prime Minister will chair COBRA today. The government's top priority is the security of its people. And I urge everyone to remain calm, but to be vigilant. And if they see anything they are concerned about, they should report it to the police. We have the best police, the best security services in the world. And we must make sure that we let them get on with doing their job. The British people will be united in working together to defeat those who would harm our shared values. Values of democracy, tolerance, and the rule of law. Values symbolised by the Houses of Parliament. Never be destroyed.
Well, some words from Amber Rudd, the Home Secretary, presumably speaking, if not actually at midnight, then gone midnight in Pakistan, where she's on an official visit.
It was just after 2:30 this afternoon that these events unfolded. David Bowden has the story of the day.
In the middle of the afternoon, with Parliament packed, a terror attack on the Palace of Westminster, which left a policeman knifed, shot in the grounds, as terrified passers-by fled. Listen closely for the gunshots. Around the corner on Westminster Bridge, carnage, as people lay injured on the pavement after a car ploughed into them before smashing into the railings of Parliament itself.
I was just walking across the bridge when suddenly a bus stopped right in front of me and everybody started screaming. And I saw a trainer in the road, and first of all,
A trainer as in a shoe?
A shoe, yeah. And I thought somebody must have been hit by a car. And then I saw a body on the other side of the road. And then there was another body further up. And then when I looked over the side of the bridge, there was another body lying in the water.
Just on top of the London tour bus.
Yeah.
We were coming over the bridge. And we heard what we thought was a gunshot wound. Not 100% sure, are you? And we just thought the car, it just went off here, just ploughed into people, and there was one person under the wheel. And then as you looked further along the bridge, there was people just lying down on the floor, and they were shot. I'd say I probably saw about maybe 10 bodies on there. But then it all happened so quickly, and the emergency services came and we came off the bridge.
Within minutes, parliamentary proceedings were halted, the chamber locked down.
I am now going to suspend the sitting of the House. This House is now suspended, but please wait here.
The Prime Minister was rushed to safety by her protection detail.
I've never seen the Prime Minister moved away by the biggest plainclothes security policeman I'd ever seen, put his arm around her and very quickly away. And we could see that she was taken to her car. Automatic weapons were produced by the security detail, and she was very, very rapidly moved to safety.
Police cleared the entire area around Westminster as a fleet of ambulances moved onto the bridge and began treating the victims mown down by the car as it sped towards Parliament. Many stood no chance of getting out of the way. Those that saw it will never forget it. Paramedics crowded round their individual patients along most of the length of the bridge. Specialist counter-terrorism firearms police secure the area and sweep it for any other potential threats. Even the London Eye, which overlooks the Thames at Westminster, was temporarily shut down, those on board having to wait to be given the all clear. Tonight, the area is still locked down as terror came back to the streets of London. David Bodenskine.
It will be a long and time-consuming journey home for many of those office workers, MPs, civil servants, and indeed just tourists who are in the Westminster area today. Taking us through it all this afternoon has been our Home Affairs correspondent Mark White, who joins us now again from Westminster. And Mark, as the dust settles and people begin to consider what happened today, there'll always be that trade-off between having a parliament which is open, but which is also secure. That's the essential trade-off.
Yes, and it is a lot more secure than it ever used to be in terms of trying to safeguard main entrances from vehicle-borne attacks. So you have concrete bollards at certain locations around Parliament, and then at the entrances to the main gates there, you have these special barriers that raise up from the road itself to stop a vehicle getting through. We know, of course, that this vehicle crashed into the perimeter fence just before it reached Parliament Square, and the attacker then ran round the corner at that point and confronted officers who were on guard at the fencing itself, or just at the main gate, and managed, after stabbing one of those officers, to get inside into the courtyard before he was eventually shot. But they certainly have increased the level of security around Parliament in the last few years. And it is a trade-off, as you say, because they want to make this open and available to the public. You can queue up, you can get tours of Westminster, just like you can in other democratic institutions, at the White House in the US. They want to make it available. They don't want to be in this position where everything is locked down. But clearly that makes it vulnerable. And today we've just seen just how vulnerable it can be with what is a devastating attack launched by one man in one vehicle, in a 4x4 vehicle, not a large truck that we saw in Nice, and then again repeated at the Christmas market attack in Berlin. This was a car, but you can see the devastating effect that a car can have when it plows along the pavement, busy pavement, full of tourists on Westminster Bridge. And of course, we now know, we were getting earlier reports that multiple police officers had been injured in this attack, and we initially thought that they were guarding, certainly one of them was guarding the palaces of Westminster themselves. 3 others have been confirmed as actually coming from an award ceremony. They would have known very little about what was happening. They were ploughed into by this vehicle as well. We don't know at this stage what their conditions are, but we know that 1 police officer has died, that the attacker is now deceased, and that 2 other innocent, we believe members of the public, have been killed as well. 20 others injured. It really is a devastating attack, and the kind of attack that the authorities in this country have been warning about for a long time, and preparing for carrying out exercises just this weekend to react and respond as quickly as they can to these types of attacks. But when they happen so sporadically, with little planning, and just in a civilian vehicle, it's very, very difficult to guard against that kind of event.
Okay, Mark, thanks very much. Mark White.
Well, as these events unfolded, there was enormous confusion around Westminster, and people were told to get out of the Houses of Parliament and told to really take shelter. And this is one of the places they went to, Westminster Abbey. Those inside, the doors were closed, and they were kept inside for their own safety for quite a period of time. These pictures have been sent to us by the Dean of Westminster Abbey, one of the places that people, Westminster Hall, one of the places that people went to.
Well, in terms of the information flow, the police were keen to get as many facts out there as quickly as they possibly could. There was an initial holding statement, and then the most senior counter-terrorism officer at Scotland Yard, Mark Rowley, had this to say.
As you know, we've declared this as a terrorist incident, and the Counter-Terrorism Command are carrying out a full-scale investigation into the events today. The attack started when a car was driven over Westminster Bridge, hitting and injuring a number of members of the public, also including 3 police officers on their way back from a commendation ceremony. Then crashed near to Parliament, and at least one man, armed with the knife, continued the attack and tried to enter Parliament. Sadly, I can confirm that now 4 people have died, an officer who was protecting Parliament, and 1 man we believe to be the attacker who was shot by a police firearms officer. The officer's family have been made aware. 20 people have been injured. As part of long established and well-rehearsed plans, Parliament has been locked down and the Met responded in line with our plans for a marauding terrorist attack. That response included uniformed and specialist firearms officers. We now, of course, have an ongoing operation, and whilst we currently believe there was only 1 attacker, we understand us taking every precaution in locking down and searching the area as thoroughly and exhaustively as possible. And I know that the officials working within Parliament and public in the area completely understand the need to do this, and I thank them for their patience and their support. This investigation has the full weight and expertise of the Counter-Terrorism Command behind it. If there are people who saw the events unfold today that haven't yet spoken to us, I would urge them to get in touch. The crime scene will remain in place in the affected areas in Westminster, and as you'll understand, it's vital we carry out a painstaking investigation to recover all the possible evidence. Looking forward, throughout the rest of the day, including when people are commuting home, and indeed over the days that follow, the people of London will see extra police officers armed and unarmed on our streets. This includes our officers working longer hours and extra shifts, alongside our colleagues from British Transport Police and the City of London. And of course, as you're aware, we can call on the support of the military should we need to at a future point. We are also in the process of opening up our casualty bureau to help those people who are worried about friends and family who may have been caught up in the attack. Furthermore, we're reaching out to communities and community leaders across London to reassure them. Our strength as a city depends on our ability to stand together at such terrible times. If anyone sees anything suspicious or anything that causes concern, please do contact us. Don't hesitate. My thoughts are with all those who have been affected by today's attack. We've lost one of our own as he acted to protect the public and his colleagues. This is a day we planned for, but we hope would never happen. Sadly, it's now a reality. We will continue to do all we can to protect the people of London.
We have been told that the COBRA Emergency Committee is in session. Whether it's actually sitting right now, shortly is the word actually from Downing Street. These are the words of the number 10 spokesperson who said that the thoughts of the PM and the government are with those killed and injured in this appalling incident and with their families. The Prime Minister is being kept updated and will shortly chair the COBRA Committee.
We're also hearing from America that the White House says President Trump has told Theresa May that the US offers its full cooperation and support in responding to the London attacks. I think we can hear from President Trump's spokesperson, Sean Spicer.
The President has been briefed on the situation in London. He just spoke to Prime Minister May, and we'll have a readout on that situation and that call soon. We obviously condemn today's attack in Westminster, which the United Kingdom is treating as an act of terrorism. And we applaud the quick response that the British police and their first responders made to the situation. The victims In this, our thoughts and our prayers. London and Her Majesty's government have the full support of the U.S. government in responding to the attack and bringing those to justice who are responsible. We will provide you with further updates as warranted, and as I mentioned, a readout of the President's call with the Prime Minister.
Let's just bring in former Metropolitan Police Officer Graham Whetton, who's sitting with us in the studio. Been watching the footage this afternoon, Graham, watching what's happened and unfold. And Mark quite touched on it a little earlier, but how difficult is it to prevent something like this happening? I've passed Westminster a lot on foot, and I look at those bollards on the street, and I think how ugly they are. It annoys me that they are there in my city that I love, and that they're spoiling this view of Parliament. But events like this just show how essential they are, don't they?
But it just shows you can still walk around them. You can drive the car almost to the front part and walk around them and then just run through an open gate. It depends how accessible and open you want your Parliament to be. Parliament's literally in the middle of London. It's right next to a really busy main road, busy opposite a busy tube station. There are thousands of people every day that walk past Parliament. I walk past it myself on Monday about 3 o'clock. The pavements are busy, people are stopping, taking photographs. It's an iconic location that draws people to it. So it's really difficult then to secure it and isolate it from this type of attack. Almost impossible to put the type of security measures in that stops one person just being able to either run through a gate or run through an entrance and not be stopped. You don't have these sort of like airport-style security scanners. You have to go in one door and then the other door opens, you walk through the other side. Unless you've got that system in place, which the Department wouldn't like you say, you hate seeing it there because it actually restricts your access. It's virtually impossible to secure it against this type of attack, this level of attack.
The anniversary of the attacks on Brussels. What's your instinct telling you about what we're seeing today? Who do you think will be behind something like this?
I think that's too early to say. I think the investigation team will be looking very closely at the individual involved and their background, their links, any links to known groups, maybe groups that had links to the attack a year ago. And if there are links there, they'll announce that in the future. There's always speculation now about how well known when it comes out that the assailant, the attacker was to police, whether they were known to the security services, what sort of measures of security were in place to either observe and monitor. But the truth of it is you cannot monitor all these people 24/7. It's hugely resource intensive, hugely costly. There has to be a decision made somewhere at some time of what the priorities are and who your priorities are in respect to security. And it usually happens that the people that carry out these sort of attacks are literally either just gone off the radar or are just under the radar. They've been known or seen, but they're not been highlighted or identified as being capable of carrying out this type of attack.
You sort your expertise after events like this before, the killing of Lee Rigby, 7/7, and always you get the armchair detectives who come out, the detractors who'll come out and say, how can it be that the sounds of pandemonium on London Bridge, of a car swiping people, the screams, the shrieking, the hysteria, the noise, didn't alert armed officers in Palace Yard that something bad was coming their way, to which you would say what?
Well, they probably did. They were alerted to an incident, but the reaction would be it's something innocent. It isn't something. This is unheard of. You can just see by the coverage that you've been doing, other news agencies are doing. This is unheard of. This isn't expected or anticipated, even planned for. This is a completely separate or isolated type of attack. We haven't seen this type of attack before. So when you hear people scream and shout and people running, and you hear a car crash into a wall, your first reaction as a police will be that either someone's had a medical emergency at the wheel of a car, or it swerves to avoid someone, or it's a normal road traffic collision. And I think the screaming maybe because they've seen someone fall out of the car. So
that Roger, of course, we had the Nice attack with the lorry that plowed through, and we also had the attack at the Christmas market. Vehicles have been.
It was a knife, was a car.
Well, it isn't your thoughts, but I think to react first of all to it, and have come out from either vehicles in Old Palace Yard or within the confines of